So I came across an old video of Dinesh D'Souza giving a speech at a Young America's Foundation event. The YAF is a conservative youth organization, funded by old rich people like the Koch brothers. Having recently unpacked D'Souza's anti-climate change rhetoric, I figured I'd give this one a shot as well. The good news for the YAF is that this video is free, and I won't charge a minimum of $25,000. Oh, and before I get started, something about a subscribe and a bell button. Okay, so D'Souza is going to take the easy straw man and pretend that the argument is merely that income inequality exists. Not that it has grown over the past 40 years and left most Americans living paycheck to paycheck and one emergency away from bankruptcy, as all of the added economic gains have gone to the top. And he's certainly not going to mention that the US now has the highest income inequality of all advanced OECD nations, who unlike the United States, haven't implemented this trickle-down economics scam by gutting unions and slashing taxes on the wealthy and corporations, which in fact, why they still have thriving middle classes. No, D'Souza will pretend that the argument is that income inequality exists and that it is not fair.
Well, some of it is an optical illusion. See, what happens is our economic statistics are a freeze frame. They'll take the country and they'll divide it, as someone did earlier in a question, into 5 quintiles. The bottom, the second lower, the middle, the upper middle, and then the upper quintile.
So D'Souza rightly mentions the quintiles, but he pretends that quintiles are static, whereas, in fact, they have mostly lost buying power as the wealth has concentrated at the top. Yes, so we generally start out taking a low-paying job and move our way up the quintiles to an extent. What D'Souza is omitting is that social mobility in the United States tends to be fixed. So if you were born into a family in the 3rd quintile, chances are, that's as high as you'll go. This is more true in the United States than in many other OECD countries. This is important to note because one of the common arguments from income inequality apologists is that, sure, income inequality may be greater in the US, but your chances of moving up the economic ladder are higher. This is simply not true.
So I ask myself, I think about this, I think about my own life, which quintile does Dinesh belong in? And then it hits me. I actually have lived in every quintile. When I came to America, I had $500 in my pocket with not another penny to be tapped. I was in the bottom quintile, and I stayed there for probably 10 years. And then as I got my first job, I was paid, I forget, $14,000 a year, something like that. I was in the next quintile, the 4th quintile. And so over my career, as I've done better, sold more books, made movies, done this, done that, I moved up into higher quintiles, but I actually had the experience of being in all the quintiles. So if you had freeze frame me at any given time, you take Dinesh and stick him in 2, or stick him in 3. But the truth of it is, if I actually look at my life, it's an actual upward mobility through all the quintiles. The data's not capturing that. It's capturing me here, it's sticking me in that bucket. Captures me here, puts me in that bucket. And so to look at that data, you think I've never moved, because the bottom quintile is still the bottom. Of course, because there's always going to be a bottom quintile. That's the thing to remember.
Okay, so we have D'Souza's rags to riches story. First off, most people simply work jobs. They don't become professional mouthpieces for special money interests. So his personal story is a bit of an outlier. Also, D'Souza's father was an executive at Johnson & Johnson, which may very well have put their family in the top quintile. So this would have been D'Souza's starting point. Now, let's watch him continue to avoid the reality that most Americans are finding themselves in, and summarize income inequality as some cartoonish version of a thought experiment where I guess the actors live in a vacuum.
The way to think about all this is like this. Let's imagine a perfectly just society. A socialist society. Everyone in this room has exactly $100. Okay? And now imagine one person, this could be Shaquille O'Neal, it could be J.K. Rowling. Somebody creates a product, a Harry Potter novel, and says, hey guys, want to get my Harry Potter novel? And let's say 50 of us go, yeah, let's get it, let's stand in line and get it. Okay, it's going to cost you $10. So suddenly, let's just say of all of us, 100 people put up $10, and suddenly we have inequality. Suddenly J.K. Rowling is sitting on a stash of $1,000 or more, and you have all this inequality. But think about it. Is there any social injustice? No. Why? Because each of us voluntarily gave her the $10 in exchange for the novel. It was worth it for us to do that. So the inequality exists, but it carries no moral stigma whatsoever. J.K. Rowling has not ripped off any of us. That's the way to think of a capitalist economy. You only find the greed and the selfishness when someone is taking something to which they have no legitimate right.
The irony in D'Souza's scenario is that he's mentioning redistribution as greed. The problem, of course, is that we've already seen 40 years of upward redistribution. That's the genius of these right-wing mouthpieces. They've become experts at framing their arguments. Fighting income inequality really means rolling back 40 years of policies that have distributed the wealth upwards. Not stealing from the rich. Of course, I'm just some random guy on YouTube. Let's hear it from an actual billionaire entrepreneur.
In this sense, an ordinary consumer is more of a job creator than a capitalist like me. That's why when business people take credit for creating jobs, it's a little bit like squirrels taking credit for creating evolution. It's actually the other way around. Anyone who's ever run a business knows that hiring more people is a course of last resort for capitalists. It's what we do if and only if rising consumer demand requires it. And in this sense, calling ourselves job creators isn't just inaccurate, it's disingenuous. That's why our existing policies are so upside down. When the biggest tax exemptions and the lowest tax rates benefit the richest, all in the name of job creation, all that happens is that the rich get richer. Since 1980, the share of income for the top 1% of Americans has more than tripled, while our effective tax rates have gone down by 50%. If it was true that lower taxes for the rich and more wealth for the wealthy led to job creation, today we would be drowning in jobs. And thank you. And yet, unemployment and underemployment is at record highs. Another reason that this idea is so wrong-headed is that there can never be enough super rich people to power a great economy. Somebody like me makes hundreds or thousands of times as much as the median American, but I don't buy hundreds or thousands of times as much stuff. My family owns 3 cars, not 3,000. I buy a few pairs of pants and shirts a year like most American men. Occasionally we go out to eat with friends. I can't buy enough of anything to make up for the fact that millions of unemployed and underemployed Americans can't buy any new cars, any clothes, or enjoy any meals out. Nor can I make up for the falling consumption of the vast majority of middle-class families that are barely squeaking by, buried by spiraling costs and trapped by stagnant or declining wages. Here's an incredible fact, that if the typical American family still retained the same share of income that they did in 1970, they'd earn like $45,000 more a year. Imagine what our economy would be like if that were the case. Significant privileges have come to people like me, capitalists, for being perceived as job creators at the center of the economic universe, and the language and metaphors we use to defend the current economic and social arrangements is telling. It's a small jump from job creator to the creator. This language obviously wasn't, this language was not chosen by accident. And it's only honest to admit that when somebody like me calls themselves a job creator, we're not just describing how the economy works, but more particularly, we're making a claim on status and privileges that we deserve. Speaking of special privileges, the extraordinary differential between the 15% tax rate that capitalists pay on carried interest, dividends, and capital gains, and the 35% top marginal rate on work that ordinary Americans pay, is kind of hard to justify without a touch of deification. We've had it backwards for the last 30 years. Rich people like me don't create jobs. Jobs are a consequence of an ecosystemic feedback loop between customers and businesses. And when the middle class thrives, businesses grow and hire, and owners profit. That's why taxing the rich to pay for investments that benefit all is such a fantastic deal for the middle class and the rich. So, ladies and gentlemen, here's an idea worth spreading. In a capitalist economy, the true job creators are middle-class consumers, and taxing the rich to make investments that make the middle class grow and thrive is the single shrewdest thing we can do for the middle class, for the poor, and for the rich. Thank you.